Hey everybody, how's everyone doing? Thanks everyone for joining this live stream. I know it's a Friday and it's half term, so like you probably had a lot better things to be doing, but I'm glad you're here. This was a requested video about going over some tips for exam motivation and evidence-based study tips. Oh, thank you. Hey Hugo, hey guys. Thanks everyone for joining. It's really nice to see you. I know some of you can't always make all of the live streams, so it's really nice when people can get here. Oh, some weird guy just walked past the window. If you were here in yesterday's live stream, you'll remember that sometimes people just stand outside and wonder what I'm doing in here with this gong, which is always fun, always fun. So how was everyone's half term? I hope it was good. I hope you are looking forward to the end of your GCSEs because it's coming. You're going to be done soon. So what are we doing today in this video? Well, this was a really requested video about going over some tips to maintain motivation during exam season. And also going over some tips on how to get the most out of your revision. So what are we going to be going over today? Well, I found there's some really good studies going over some really efficient techniques to keep motivated and to keep studying. And also we're going to talk about some ways to have some good positive thoughts, good visualizations, and all that kind of stuff. And if you're wondering like what qualifies Jono to talk about this, well, I was a tutor for about 7 years, so I've done a lot of teaching. I obviously was a student for ages, and I've done a lot of, so I've read a lot of science papers. I studied medicine at uni, just preclinical. Didn't really like hospitals, wasn't for me. So I'm quite good at looking at data. So we've got some really good collections of data going over some really efficient techniques. And I also worked in mental health policy for like a year. So it's an interest of mine and it's a really important sector. I'm going to go over some of the knowledge I gained from that and some knowledge I gained from some studies that give some really good tips. So I'll stop babbling. And if any of you have any questions, just chuck them in the chat. I'll keep an eye on it. So we're going to start by talking about motivation, okay? And one of the most effective techniques is to chunk your work. And what do I mean by chunk? It's like put it into cute little chunks so it doesn't seem as intimidating. So this leads me on to talk about a technique called the Pomodoro Technique. Hey, for everyone joining the chat. So the Pomodoro Technique, this is something I discovered at uni, and oh my gosh, it's so good. Basically, you work in 25-minute chunks, okay? And in that 25 minutes, you turn off your phone, you ask people very politely to not bother you, and you just spend 25 minutes of really intensely working on one subject. No interruptions, then you have a 5-minute break where you reward yourself, you go for a walk, have a cup of tea, something like that. And it's a really, really efficient way of learning, and it also means that your brain is getting regular breaks so you don't feel too overwhelmed. Now, why is this technique good for motivation? Well, there was a study by Cirillo et al. 2006. Got to be quoting it. If there's no evidence, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not just making stuff up. I want to make sure that I'm giving you advice that has some science behind it. And they did a study on this technique, and it showed that it was able to alleviate pressures from time, alleviate pressure from making decisions, and keep motivation constantly compared to other studying techniques. So by reducing the interruptions, it really can help enhance your concentration. So it's a really, really good technique, and it can be really good with procrastination because when you think about it, it's you've only got to do 25 minutes. It's nothing. So it can help you get out of that like procrastination like spiral, which I fall into, and it's like really annoying. But if you've got a structure and you've got something to follow, it can make it so much easier to just be like, okay, chill, I've just got to give 25 minutes, and then I get a 5-minute break and I can have a cup of tea, go for a walk. Love it. Okay. So I would recommend trying to maybe do like 3 or 4 of these sessions in the morning and then take like a good 20-minute break and then do the same in the afternoon. And if you've got to relearn all of history in 2 days, do it in Pomodoros, 25 minutes at a time, and you will get there, okay? So that's a really good way to structure your revision. And it definitely helped me when I was like revising for my finals, because there was a lot of crap I had to cover. So it's a really good technique, and it's been shown that it can really help with motivation. So when you are studying, how can you get the most out of what you're doing? I'm all about working smart rather than working hard, because I got friends to see, I've got brunches to go to, you know what I mean? I've got stuff I need to do. I've got gongs that I need to like hit. So I want to make sure that I'm getting the most out of my work when I do sit down to work. And that can also make you really motivated, because if you're only going to be working for 25 minutes at a time, it's like, I want to get the most out of this. So how can you get the most out of what you're studying? Well, there's actually a lot of evidence about how to study effectively, which I just was like, it like varies from person to person or whatever, which it does, but there are some certain techniques that are shown to be objectively more effective. Okay, so what are these amazing techniques? Well, I'm going to say one cute little buzzword for you guys, and that is active recall. It's so important. It's getting a gong. It's getting a gong. I know there are people outside. I don't care. I'm gonging for you guys, and you're going to probably get a formal complaint, and I am here for it. So what is active recall? Well, if you're cramming, so I know like Hugo, you said you've got your history exam in 2 days that you've got to cram for, you want to be doing it active. You want to be using active learning. And this study, it's by Dunlosky et al. 2013. It's linked in the description. So I'm not just making it up, I promise. And they reviewed like hundreds of studies looking at effective studying techniques. And active recall was something that came up time and time again. And active recall involves trying to actively bring up information. So something that can be effective is like a closed book spider diagram. So think about a topic and write down everything you know about that topic on the page, okay? So when you write out everything you know on the page, have your textbook closed so it's all coming from your memory. And then once you've written it out, spend about 5 to 10 minutes reading to the textbook to see the bits that you missed. Close the textbook, repeat, close the textbook, repeat. And this active recall is a really good way of making sure you remember the key bits of the syllabus or of the course. There are other ways you can do this. You can do it with flashcards. Flashcards are really useful, which is why we've just made a bunch of flashcard courses, because they're a really effective way of getting out information. Other things you can do is like write down a key heading and everything you remember at the heading. So if you're doing like biology, we did biology live stream yesterday, you could write something like modes of transport and then try and remember all of the different ones, like diffusion, active transport, facilitated diffusion, everything you remember about them. And that active recall is what's really going to help you retain that information, okay? So that's what we mean by active recall. The other kind of big thing that came from that study was distributed practice. Now, what do we mean by distributed practice? The key thing here is to have short and regular reviews of content. This has been repeatedly shown to be more effective than sitting down for long intervals and going over one topic, okay? So if you are revising history, you want to be doing short sessions and regularly reviewing it. We have got a question. So multiple subjects a day or just one or two? Again, there is a degree of personal preference. It does depend. I would say it's good to vary what you're studying. So I would say maybe 2 or 3 subjects a day can be good, just because you want short and regular review of content. That's what the study said was the most effective way to help retain information. So by doing short bursts of your different subjects regularly, it means you're more likely to retain the information. So say what you're doing like maths, biology, and chemistry, do like an hour of maths, an hour of chemistry, and an hour of whatever other subject I said. You could spread it over 2 days and do half an hour on each day, something like that. So short, regular review is really effective. And again, this is why that Pomodoro technique is really, really useful, because it's just a nice short 25-minute burst. So all of these like motivation techniques and study techniques all kind of nicely melt together to get you into like a really good state for your revision and exams. So again, it's personal preference. I wouldn't worry if you have just been studying one subject. If you've got one subject coming up really soon, it does make sense to spend more of your time doing that one topic. Just try and vary the topics you do. So if you're not varying subjects, just vary the topics you're doing within that subject, so you're not revising the same thing. So there's no need to panic. There's no need to worry. This is just some pieces of evidence. It's all about finding what works best for you. So keep the questions coming in. I will do my best to answer them. And again, I'm loving the vibe in the chat. You guys are all supporting each other and being really positive. That's what we like at Seneca. That's what we want to promote. Yes, so I will still be doing the night before revision sessions. It will probably be for the most popular exams and exam boards because I am but one Jono. I'm trying to slowly but surely, you know, roping people in. But yes, we will be doing the night before courses for the next few weeks. So get your requests in, let me know which topics are going to be the most popular, and I'll do my best to go over them. Now, we've talked over some really good techniques, and we talked about how to stay motivated and avoid procrastination. So always think about why you're procrastinating. Is it because you don't want to do the task? Is it because you're scared of failing or whatever? And just challenge those thoughts, like, why am I wanting to do, like, why am I procrastinating? That can be the first step in helping to stop it. So in terms of how long you should be revising for, so in terms of how long you should revise for, again, at a time, I would say like 25 minutes at a time. I think the 8-8-8 technique is good. So 8 hours of work, 8 hours of leisure, 8 hours of sleep is a good way to do it and divide up your time. Half time, you do have a little bit of extra time. So doing 10 hours isn't bad, but you don't want to be exhausted. So I wouldn't go too much above that. And make sure you are not in one go. Make sure it's spread out the 8 hours of revision and 8 hours of leisure time throughout the day. And that, I think, is a good way to do it. In terms of history, we might be able to do. We might be able to do a history live stream. It depends. History's a hard one because of all the different exam boards and all the different topics. There's a lot of choice, so it's hard to know the best one to do. But if the same one is requested loads and loads, can't see why we wouldn't do that. And doing practice papers or just go over. I think so. In terms of going over content and practice papers are good because that's the active recall, remember? So from that nice Dunlosky study, represent Dunlosky, I think practice papers are good because you're going to be actively trying to recall information rather than just reading it. So I would use the practice papers to then decide which topics you need to maybe read up a little bit more on, okay? So that is what I would recommend. So in terms of sleep, yeah, 8 hours is a recommended sleep, and sleep is super important during exam season, right? Because sleep is where all of your memories consolidate. So that's when all of your memories go from the short-term store to the long-term store of memory. So you need to be sure you're getting your sleep, and sleep is also so important for your mental health. So make sure you're getting enough sleep. Doing my best to go through the questions, keep them coming in. Let me scroll down. So maths paper 2, except, yeah, we will be doing a maths paper 2 for sure. For sure, we'll be doing a maths paper 2 the night before course. We'll be going over some predicted papers and like key exam tips. Geography AQA paper 2. Okay, seeing these requests, keep them coming in. English language paper 2. Glad you asked. I'm literally after this at 5. There's an English language paper 2 live stream. Can I I will hit the gong a bit later. Okay, cool. I would absolutely love to do a live chat for food prep GCSE. I loved food prep. It was so good. I made such good cereal bars. Okay, so I'll have a look. I'll keep my eye on the chat. So let me know any more questions, and keep the requests for courses coming in. We'll do the most popular ones. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was, again, this is important for motivation, is cognitive distortions and positive visualization, which sounds super nebulous, and you're just like, oh my God, who let Jono do this live stream? Like, what is he chatting about? But basically, this is some really important research which shows the importance of having positive visualizations and positive thoughts about your upcoming exams. So cognitive distortions is stuff like filtering, when you only focus on negative details and you magnify them, and by doing that you filter out the positive elements. Or overgeneralizing things, so you come to a conclusion based on a single incident. So maybe you do one practice paper and it doesn't go well and you're like, oh, I'm not going to do well in this exam. That's overgeneralizing. Just be like, actually, it's just one past paper. It doesn't mean does that I'm not going to do well, okay? And that's similar to like jumping to conclusions and you're assuming you know what's going to happen when it's just one paper or whatever, okay? Other kind of like cognitive distortions are stuff like catastrophizing, which is like, oh, like you're magnifying in on something and saying something really bad is going to happen. Let's stop that thought process and just think, actually, do you know what? Everything's going to be fine. I'll work it out. I'm great. I'm bomb. So those are the kind of things that can definitely happen during exam season. You can start thinking, you can just start spiraling. You can start having some cognitive distortions and finding things difficult, which is normal because it's a stressful time. But there's a study I really want to talk about, which has some really interesting results about positive visualization. So what do I mean by this? What's Jono talking about? Well, it's a study by Eagleson et al. 2016. I think it was done at King's College in London. And it's all about the power of positive thinking. So in this study, what they did is they had a group of individuals with generalized anxiety disorder, which is a type of anxiety condition. Normally, they've tried to treat it, but it still persists. So they get a diagnosis of generalized anxiety disorder. And what they did is they did an experiment where they trialed positive visualization. So people who were experiencing anxiety and recurrent thoughts of worry were replacing these thoughts with alternatives for 1 week. That's what the study called them. And these alternatives were positive outcomes that were rehearsed as images or verbal thoughts. So the individuals in this study would visualize positive outcomes of their actions. So for when you're studying or when you're doing your GCSEs and you're feeling anxious, a good positive visualization would be something like imagining you going into your exam and your exam going really well, or going into the exam and coming out feeling really confident. So those were the kind of images that the individuals in this study were having. And this was done over a period of a month. And 1 month later, all of the groups reported significantly reduced anxiety and worry. So positive idealization can effectively counter worry and anxiety. That's the key takeaway from this study. And so how does that apply to studying and GCSEs and all that kind of stuff? Well, it's just a good piece of evidence to show that thinking about a positive outcome can be really useful at reducing anxiety and worry and stress. And it's definitely something that helps me when I'm feeling worried. So just imagine yourself going in and bossing that exam, and it can, just that visualization can really help reduce that anxiety. So that's my spiel. That's my spiel done. So we've got a few minutes left. So chuck some questions in the chat. I'll have a scroll through. And oh, it's really hot in this room. Sorry if you can see I'm sweating. Okay, so just looking at the questions. So, but advice about going to bed. Okay, so no, it's still related to revision. So getting out of bed earlier and getting to sleep at night. I think getting enough sleep is the most important. So I'd say like 7 to 8 hours is normally what's recommended. It's where all of your memories consolidate. And getting out of bed, like if you're an early riser, you're an early riser. I was always a night owl, so I preferred working a bit later in the evening and I'd wake up a little bit later. So that's kind of personal preference. But as long as you're getting enough sleep, that is the most important thing. And you guys are being so nice and helping each other out in the chat. So nice to see. So yeah, unis will look at GCSEs and predictions for those of you asking in the chat. TED Talk about stress, love that. Love a good TED Talk. Okay, so I think I've got to go and prep for the English language paper 2 live stream, which is happening at 5. Educast Geography, I see your requests, keep them coming in and we will do the most popular ones. Hit us up on Insta as well, send us some messages. So just quickly to summarize, remember active recall when you're studying, trying to actively recall facts, really, really useful. You're going to want to be having positive idealization and positive vibes, good vibes only, thinking about the upcoming exams. And again, that can be good for motivation, just having that positive idealization of going into your exam, thinking about yourself, sitting down and absolutely bossing it. That can really help reduce anxiety. It's been shown. The study is linked in the description, so you can read it. Promise I'm not lying to you guys. As ever, thank you so much for joining. I hope this was the first time we did this kind of stream. So if you want this sort of thing again, let me know. They're normally quite academic. So let us know the other kind of stuff you want to do. I could do like a more detailed one on study techniques, because that study is long. So let us know what was good, and stick around. I'll see you guys at 5 for the English language live stream. I'm excited about it. Persuasive writing, ooh, rhetorical questions, what? It's gonna be great. As ever, thanks for joining. Gong us out. And I'll see you in half an hour for the English language live stream. Thanks, guys. See you later.